Hi, and thanks for joining us again on another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host and Master Gardening Intern, Tinisha Shade-Spain, and we've got a fantastic show for you tonight. Lots of show and tells and some really great questions that you sent in, and our panelists are here ready to answer those questions for you. So let's just jump right in and have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their expertise. So Chuck, we'll start with you.
All right, I am Chuck Voigt. I'm a retiree from the University of Illinois. My specialties there were vegetables and herbs. But I also have some backgrounds in other food crops, and you know, I've had courses and some other things. So vegetables and fruits would probably be the best place to start.
Okay, all right, wonderful.
I'm Kay Carnes. I'm a Champaign County Master Gardener, and I also, my specialty is vegetables and herbs, but I primarily do heirloom vegetables, so that's
a nice little niche.
Yes, it is.
All right, and last but not least.
Thank you. My name is Rusty Maulding. I'm a partner and horticulturist for Nature's View, which is a full-service landscape contracting business up out of Watseka. I'm also a past president of the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association, and basically I've spent most of my professional career working with pretty things, the outside pretty things.
Gotcha. So this time of year,
you
you just fit to be tied?
I'm struggling. There's still leaves to clean up, and
okay,
there's snow on the ground. So
you got that going for you.
We'll get there.
Okay. All right, Chuck, we're going to start with you. We've got some show and tells.
Yes, we do. I was out looking for something that I could bring in, and I came up with these guys. And as I told you earlier, to be most accurate, it's Witloof Chicory, Whitloof. But it's probably more popularized as Belgian endive.
Okay. Which,
since there's something else that's endive, you almost get into the yam sweet potato thing, which we don't want to go into.
Gotcha.
But if you're looking for recipes, you'll probably find Belgian endive recipes more than Witloof chicory recipes. But it's kind of a fun crop because you grow it in the ground, and it grows up lots of leaves, makes a big fat taproot. At the end of the season, you dig them up, you put them somewhere chilled, and then as the winter progresses, you take them into a dark, warm place, stand them up in some soil, and in the dark, they don't develop chlorophyll, so all the chicories are a little bit bitter, and this kind of mellows that out a bit.
Oh.
And so, and if you take these apart, I've seen them, individual leaves, because this is what would be a sprout on the plant, individual leaves, and then you do fun things in them with stuffings and drizzles and whatever. I was a little surprised that they weren't horribly expensive. It was like $1 a piece, and given all the work that goes into getting them, you might want to try them this way first to see if it's worth growing them in your garden and taking them down into the basement and forcing them and doing all that work. Because I think basically they make one big sprout like this. It's called a chicon, C-H-I-C-O-N. And then after you cut this one, they might do some side sprouts, but they'll be smaller. So,
what's your favorite recipe, or do you like them?
I'll let you know the next time I see you, because I've read about growing them, and I've actually seen them being forced. But in terms of eating them, historically I'm not a bitter person. So,
gotcha. Okay.
Well, I can be bitter, but
that's
another show. But well,
interesting.
There's a couch on that show.
And these come in. You get two greenish ones and one reddish one, and it's fairly similar to radicchio.
Okay.
If with radicchio, I think they grow them through the season, and then as you get toward fall, they cut off the leaves, and then they get a new sprout like this, but it develops in sunlight, and so it gets more color.
Gotcha.
So it's a pretty close relative of radicchio, but
there's a lot of work involved.
There's a whole lot of work involved, and that's why I recommend you go to your favorite mega store based out of Michigan and get those.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, we're going to move to you, Kay. You've got a bay tree.
I do have a bay tree, and this is a little guy. I just got him this spring it has growing, and it is a tree, so it's going to be a couple years before it's big enough to really start harvesting some leaves off. But it's bay is an old herb and has been used for a long time. I think most of us here in the States know it for its culinary uses. The bay leaf, you actually pick the leaf off. Generally, you dry the leaf, but I really enjoy the fresh leaf as well. But in the stores, you're just going to see the whole dry leaf. But it's also a medicinal herb, and it's used for gastric upsets and rheumatism, and it's kind of an antiseptic as well. So
is it? And this could be way off, but I've heard. So you can buy them in the store, diced or not diced, but in a shaker bottle.
Right.
In terms of flavor, is it better to cook with that or with the whole leaf?
Well, generally you cook with the whole leaf because they're kind of sharp, and so you want to take it out before you serve the dish.
Gotcha.
It's easier to take out. What I usually do if I have a whole leaf is I kind of crush it up a little bit, which releases the flavors.
Gotcha. Okay.
I will say one thing for bay. Bay is an absolute magnet for scale.
Oh.
And so I've over the years I've lost more than one of these due to scale. So what I'm doing this year to prevent that is about every once a week or so I just take a damp paper towel and wash the leaves off and the stem.
Okay.
And so far so good. I haven't had. We'll see how that goes.
If you've never had the fresh leaf,
Yeah.
it's almost a totally different experience than the dried leaf.
Really?
Because it's got vanilla and floral and citrus things in it that all evaporate when you're drying the leaf, and you're left with that kind of one-note savory that we get in soups and stews and whatever.
So how long? You said this one was still fairly young. How long do you need to wait before you harvest any off of that one?
I'll probably wait a year or two till it gets a little bit bigger.
That is patience.
But then,
But
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
especially if they go outside in the summer, they grow.
Yeah,
they grow
they'll-
pretty rapidly.
Yeah,
I have a couple of 6-footers, and as I bring them in the fall, I just do a major harvest to kind of,
Yeah, whittle it down.
and then kind of
So it
they're
fits.
on a cold porch so that they just kind of
maintain.
go into dormancy, and then bring them out again in the spring, and they break new growth and are back in it. But a fresh bay simple syrup is wonderful over vanilla ice cream. It's a whole other thing. You'd never dream of that with what you do in a soup or a stew, but
Wow.
it's incredible how different it is.
Okay, noted. Fresh bay. Okay, Rusty, we're moving to. Oh, go ahead.
And it keeps in the refrigerator, like in a Ziploc, for several weeks after you pick it,
Okay.
if you keep it.
Now, if you don't have access to the plant, can you know how the grocery stores have the fresh herb section? Will that do, or are we talking pluck and?
They don't usually have. I don't usually see. You can buy dried leaves.
Yes, yes. I didn't know if they had any maybe
don't-
fresh in the.
I've not ever
I don't know that
seen-
I've ever seen it,
Okay.
even in some of the upscale
All right.
Yeah.
Just another excuse to grow
high-end
your own.
things. Yeah.
There
Okay.
you
All right. We're talking mulch.
go. To mulch or not to
Rusty's
mulch?
favorite topic ever.
That is the question. Yes, yes. Well, why the heck are we talking about mulch? And it's the middle of winter, right? Or early winter. Well, so there's a lot of things that we're doing at the end of the season in the fall that sort of relate to this, and I wanted to kind of bring in. I've talked about a way to get rid of your leaves just by mowing them up, and Kay and I were speaking a little bit before the show. This is actually what it looks like. And it's this wonderful material that reduces down these leaves in volume like 10 to 1 or more. And if you mow over them, chop it up, and then if you have excess, you blow them into your ornamental beds. So particularly if you have shrubs or if you have many perennials that you would cut back, this is a great covering.
Gotcha.
Now, as the season wears on and the ground starts to cool, the idea of the mulch is it's going to help prevent it from freezing and thawing a great deal. And so it actually is good, horticulturally speaking, to mulch in the early winter, with sort of to keep that ground cold.
Like a consistent.
It's sort of, yep, it's like putting it in the fridge.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so you can use leaves if you've got them, or this is sort of the landscaper's friend. What we buy, the shredded bark mulch.
Okay.
This is different than stuff you buy in bags. It's actually bark that's harvested off of the trees, sawmills, and they bring that bark in. It's a waste product, and it produces this fine material. It has a few larger chunks in it. So both of these products more or less stay put.
Gotcha.
Whereas some of the stuff that's more of a wood-based product, it will be more inclined to move. So if you have like ground up pallets or some bagged material, it's a fine mulch, but it is more likely to blow if you're in a windy area, or wash away if you've got some traveling water like near downspouts and that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
So mulching in the fall, while may not give you that spring pop that everybody loves, because everybody loves this stuff when it goes down in the spring.
Oh yes.
But it is a great thing to do for your beds this time of year, because it kind of helps keep them cool and keeps them resting as when we get some warm days in January and February.
And I can't remember how long ago it was, but on another show you were talking about this and how it's just free.
It's this is an awesome stuff. And even if you don't have enough to fully cover, to maintain sort of a 2 to 3 inch thickness, then in the spring when you
Just
put this over the
supplement?
top, you're only putting down a veneer, a 1 inch veneer over the top.
Okay.
So yeah, it's great. It's a great product.
Now, the stuff that you can buy in the store, does that just have more filler, or because you mentioned kind of a quality difference?
So as far as I am aware, the bark mulch is only available in bulk.
Okay.
So you need to go to a landscape independent garden center, landscape distribution place. The bagged product is almost always a wood-based. It's chips.
Okay.
And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's usually a little cheaper. But like I said, it does tend to move around a little bit more.
Okay. Gotcha.
And it's a lot harder to carry this home in the back of your car.
Yeah.
Have it delivered.
We all can't work there. All right. Thank you. All right, Chuck, we've got a question for you. Harlan in Wellington wants to know. He says, or she says, I planted one persimmon tree 4 years ago, and I'm pruning it like a shade tree so that it has no lower branches. It is now 10 foot tall, yet I haven't seen any blooms. How long is it going to take?
Well, even the persimmon selections are relatively slow to mature to flower. So I wouldn't be that at 3 to 4 years plus maybe a year or two in the nursery. I would say it could easily be another 4 to 6 years before it really gets flowering like anything. If it's surviving in Wellington, I don't know that it can be the Japanese type. I think it's probably the self-fertile American type. There are a couple of those, and they're supposedly self-fruitful. There's one that was developed in New Hampshire by a guy named Metter, and another one I don't know where it came from. Those are the two that I have, and I've had hardiness issues with them, but I'm a little further north than Wellington. I would say if in fact it's still the grafted thing that they sold you, it should continue to get taller. And if it's supposed to be self-fruitful, it probably will be, but it can't be self-fruitful until it flowers, and that may take 10 years and up. We would like it to happen faster, but
Wow. The theme for today's show is patience.
Absolutely.
I think that's right. Yeah, and as far as the Japanese type, I saw one south of St. Louis here in Illinois that had nice fruit on it. But that's about as far north as I've seen the Japanese type. I want to say they're almost a Zone 7 plant, which gets us down to the Carbondale area or beyond. So
Okay. All right. Just keep an eye on it then, and if it's healthy and thriving, hopefully the blooms will.
and the pruning that they're doing is probably correct. A single trunk and that'll work fine as a shade tree.
Just don't cut it from the top.
Right.
So,
right.
so you can limit up a little bit if you need to mow underneath it, walk underneath it, drive underneath it. But yeah, don't
Don't
chop it down from the top.
Yeah, don't chop it off at the top to make it branch more, because that's the trees know how to get big and full.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to help.
They've been doing it for a while,
Yeah,
right? Okay. All right, Kay, we're to you with the most wonderful houseplant that I think everyone should own, right?
Yes.
So many uses.
Okay. So this is an aloe plant, and I always have aloe because it's absolutely amazing for burns, insect bites. It takes the itch out immediately. All you do is cut a leaf, and then there's a gel inside of it, and you just rub it on your skin. This actually is a small one to propagate. Well, they propagate themselves, actually. This is a baby or a small one that came off of the bigger plant that I have. And you just pull them off and pot them up. And
I do that once a year, and I usually have like 15 or 20
I know.
to
It's
get rid of. I
amazing.
mean, it's right now it's totally out of control.
We call those pass-along plants.
Yes, I'm begging people to take them because I don't want to throw them out. You know.
no, and you only burn yourself so much.
Exactly.
Let's hope so.
You know what's funny? My mother-in-law is from Mexico, and they eat them a
Yeah.
lot. A lot of different cultures cut it open. I don't know what the inside is called scientifically, but they eat them for different ailments.
Well,
You can
the
get-
gel is used. I mean, you can buy the liquid aloe, and it's usually a lot of times used for stomach distress and constipation. It tastes
Yeah.
terrible, but
That's what she
'cause I
said. She said you
tried.
never wanted to have to eat it, but you know it would work. Somebody would just go snap one off
Yeah,
and
and they're easy to grow. It is a succulent, so you need to be careful. You don't want it in a really rich soil, and you want it extremely well. I let them dry out completely between waterings. Otherwise, you tend to overwater them too much, so you do have to be careful with that. But it seems to do well in about any lighting condition. I have mine in the east window, but I've had them for years. And,
Yeah.
they're really
they
great.
are awesome to have around.
You've really got to work at it to kill that plant.
You do.
Yeah, you do.
The
But
one I
I've
have
done it.
now, yes, the one I have now, I had with me in college, and I wasn't taking good care of it then. Let's just be honest, and it's still kicking.
Yeah.
So great. Okay, Rusty, we're back to you. You've got a peony.
Yeah, so this is something that's a little bit unusual. This is a Japanese tree peony.
Okay.
So most people, when you say peony, think of the herbaceous type, right?
Yes.
That grandma had, and then it lands around the flower buds, and then the leaves all turn to junk by about the first part of July. This is a tree peony, so it's woody, and these are the actual flower buds that are set for next year. So one of the interesting things about this is that other than being woody, the blooms on it, if you think of it like what a typical peony bloom would be, these things are huge. I mean,
Really?
they're like this big. I kid you not. Most of the time, I think they tend to be doubles, but there are some singles
Okay.
in flowers, pinks, purples. I have seen some yellows, and then it's just there's a lot of different varieties out there. It's a little difficult to find, and they are just a little bit pricey.
Okay.
So yeah, a plant like this is going to run you a lot more than what it may look like because they grow slow.
Gotcha.
But it is well worth the wait. The plant overall would prefer a sunny to part shade site.
Okay.
Because this time of year, typically peonies are going to cut back in the fall. This one you do not.
Oh.
So you do want to make sure that you leave all of this above ground material, the woody stems, intact over the winter. Don't prune it. So that is another interesting distinction between it and the regular peony. But overall, about 4 to 5 foot wide and approximately the same in height.
Wow.
So they're going to be a little more substantial. They do grow incredibly slow. So
I
again,
was just going to ask that.
have some patience. I've seen some that are absolutely gorgeous and magnificent that are every bit of 4 feet tall and probably 6 feet across.
So when you bring them home, what size are we talking when you bring them from the nursery? That okay.
This this is a 2-gallon, and I don't think I've ever seen them for sale in anything bigger than like a 2-gallon.
Okay.
Now, most of the places I buy from are wholesale nurseries. There may be some garden centers that have some niche in that where you can get a 3 or a 5. But they don't. They form a pretty good-sized taproot. So my guess is you're going to typically find them in smaller sizes.
Okay.
They transplant a little better.
Wind protection would be a good thing because the blooms are incredibly delicate.
Yeah.
And they tend to bloom at that time in the spring when the southwest wind whips across the prairie up here.
Right.
So somewhere where they're a little bit protected from that might give you a little longer bloom period because one hot windy day can
It can
pretty
really
much
zap it.
ruin them.
And it does bloom just a little bit later than the other peony, May into June.
Okay. And these will flower relatively young.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Because
they should.
that's a question everybody. When am I going to see blooms?
Yeah, if it doesn't bloom the first year, it should the next. I mean, they bloom pretty quickly.
Good. Okay.
I got 2 collections of 5 and through a mail order nursery.
Yeah,
And I think maybe all but one of them bloomed
that first season.
that first season.
Yeah,
And they weren't that big.
typically we've always had at least 1 or 2 blooms with something in a 2-gallon that following year, and then it sort of doubles each year after that.
My record year, and I'd never come anywhere near it. One plant had 46.
Oh wow!
It was,
It's a thing to behold. It really
You
it
should have
is.
charged admission for that one.
I guess I should have taken more pictures because it hasn't come anywhere near that since then.
Wow. Very cool. Okay, thank you. All right, Chuck, we're back to you. Speaking of blooms,
Okay.
Peter and Betsy and Homer write in about their peach trees. They have 2 8-year-old peach trees, and they're good producers. For the past 2 years, they were pruned open center, removing the downward and vertical branches. This has resulted in a huge number of vertical branches instead of more fruit. They want advice on what to do for this or the next spring.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at pictures that they sent in, and boy, they do have a lot of vertical growth. I'm thinking continue to do what you've been doing according to the directions. Take out those water sprouty things that are clogging up the middle. And then if you start to get more of them coming back, do a summer pruning, because summer pruning is usually more dwarfing than a dormant pruning. So if you come back in and take some of those out during the summer, then the rest of the plant will have more time to set up fruit buds on the remaining part of it. So that would be my recommendation in terms of the pruning that you described is the way I would tell you to do it. And if you're getting that kind of growth, I try taking some of it out in the summer and see if that doesn't, because it'll definitely open it up. And midsummer, you shouldn't get soft growth coming from that. So that's my best guess. You got anything better?
Just typically, I guess if you're pruning smaller branches, you typically don't see that rapid
I was going to ask that.
regrowth. It's just a plant struggling to try to even out the amount of top growth versus root growth. There's just sort of a balance that has to happen between the two. So the plant's seeking equilibrium again.
Gotcha.
Typically you want to do the pruning in February or March. But I agree with you. In the summer, if you have a lot of that rapid regrowth, just go back in and cut off those water sprouts.
Yeah, because peaches are a little bit iffy in the central part of the area, I would usually leave mine even a little later than that to make sure that I saw
Some
growth happening. But I grew up north of here, so maybe that's my problem. I don't know.
All right, great advice. All right, Kay, we have a question for you from Betty about her Easter cactus. She said it's got nice growth. It's doing really well, really full over the past 5 years. This year it started losing leaves. Now only 2 main trunks and a few vertical branches remain. Does it need repotted?
Yes.
Resounding.
Easter cactus is one of the most difficult of the holiday cactus to grow. But obviously she was doing something right with it, so she's had it for 3 years or 5 years, and it's doing well. But they do need to be repotted, and what she could do is just pull it out of the pot, and if it's root bound, she'll see it, and then go ahead and repot it in a larger pot. I am a little concerned because she said that she's watering it more, and that can be devastating. The leaves, if it needs water, the leaves will be wrinkled.
Okay.
And so if they're not wrinkled, it really doesn't need an increased watering. So she might want to cut back. That may have exacerbated, you know, the whole situation, that it needed to be repotted. And now she's overwatering it, and so that's just going to make it worse.
Gotcha.
So I would recommend that she cut back on the watering, repot the plant, and hope for the best. I
Okay.
guess.
All right, good advice. Before we go, we've got about a minute left. Fertilizer indoor plants in the winter, yes or no?
Some,
Depends on the plant.
yeah.
Okay.
If it's a tropical that's going to be growing through the winter, then maybe some.
Okay.
Light.
Light. Okay.
And if it's something that really wants to be dormant through the winter, then no.
Yeah.
Something less tropical, subtropical, whatever.
So it depends on the plant. I've heard both, so I just wanted to ask, you know, get a wide variety of opinions, because I've heard both ways. Don't feed or don't fertilize in the winter, just water. But I just wanted
Yeah,
to poll the group.
generally, if you got it going into a lower light period, so it's not going to be producing as much growth, you don't want to try to push it to grow. You think of it like anything else. Like you stop fertilizing your perennials, and you know, you don't want to be doing that in the fall,
Gotcha.
pushing
Okay.
out new growth.
All right. I just wanted to check on that. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you for sending in your wonderful questions, and we will see you next time. Good night.